Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is Red Chill Cinema. And Allison and I are going to be discussing Amazon's Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. It's kind of it's a mouthful,
It's
but
definitely a mouthful
yeah,
of
and
many
there,
things.
yes, but potentially many things. So, before we dive into that, I think that there are some. Well, we have to. What is it?
Do the business.
Do the house
Do the business.
cleaning. Yeah, do
Yeah.
some
Okay.
house cleaning. So,
So we have 5 days left on our fundraiser, and it is to make sure we can actually fund the show for the month. So if you would please consider going to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz and putting a few shekels in the hat to make sure that we can continue to do this work, that would be much appreciated. That's feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. Please take a few minutes and go there now and put what you can in. I will be giving people thank yous during the stream as it goes, and I will do some arm twisting if necessary. Please, I would appreciate to be spared that, and I'm sure you wish to be spared that. So go to feedthebadger.com/projects/badger-media-blitz and put something in the hat. All right, let's do this.
all right. So
Oh
we're
yeah,
gonna.
and
Hmm?
one last thing. And if you want to send us a message, go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And you can send us the message sans YouTube censorship and plus more beanies for us. So that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And those are the two items that you need to know going into the stream. Back to you, Brian.
All right. So we're gonna be looking at a couple of articles. I don't think that we've talked too much on any live streams about this new Amazon Prime series
Nope.
that's going to be launching in just a couple of weeks here. I believe it's September. It's supposed to come out. I could be wrong, but I know it's coming up shortly. And we haven't really talked about it much on our show. I have ranted about it in after shows, and patron shows, that is. So we're going to be looking at two articles from Bounding into Comics and some of their relevant, resources if we need to. Big ups to Bounding into Comics. I had the guy who is the founder. I believe he's the founder on our show, Jonathan Trent. I think he wrote these articles. So let's take a look. So this one is described as a rumor. And it is the thing that I think Allison was a bit more interested in. It's called The Lord of the Rings. So yeah, like compared to the other one.
Yeah, it's a bit more because I think it's less justifiable, shall we say. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that there's no way that you could put more smut in The Lord of the Rings without violating Tolkien's original vision. Whereas you probably could, within the canon, find a way to do more diversity in ethnicities and ethnicities. I would say ethnicities more than races, but so
Yeah.
let's take a look.
All right. So the article is entitled Rumor. So, take this with a grain of salt. The Lord of the Rings scholar Tom Shippey was fired for telling Prime Video they were polluting the lore. And let's read some of this. It does get into the juicier stuff a little bit later, but a new rumor claims that Tom Shippey, the Lord of the Rings scholar and former consultant on the Lord of the Rings of Power, again that's a mouthful, was fired from the Prime Video show because he was warning them that they were polluting the lore. When Prime Video first announced the Lord of the Rings series in July of 2019, they revealed that Shippey was part of the production as a Tolkien scholar. However, back in February, Vanity Fair led their readers to believe that Shippey was canned for giving an unquote or a quote unsanctioned interview to a German fan site, end quote, where he opined, quote, on what the show could and could not explore, end quote. Now this new rumor from YouTuber George Mulho of the YouTube channel George the Giant Slayer claims that Shippey was actually canned because he was warning Prime Video that they were, quote, polluting the lore, end quote. Now, of course, this is still, I guess, this might be sort of speculative. Again, it is just a rumor. We should treat it as such.
Mm-hmm.
Mulholland states, quote, I'm now beginning to believe the real reason that Tom Shippey was fired wasn't because he gave some interview to a German magazine that broke his NDA. That's, you get a slap on the wrist for that. He then revealed it's because I heard from 3 separate sources that he would weekly tell the Bobbsey twins of Payne and McKay that Prime was polluting the lore. So Payne and McKay, I believe, are 2 of the people that are sort of the showrunners for this. And, you know, everyone believes that they're literally taking enough inspiration from Tolkien's work to justify trying to relate it to the work. But most of the lore that he has written, that Tolkien wrote, they're completely ignoring. And part of it is that they don't have, like, the rights to a lot of it, so they can't use it, but they're still intent on using the brand, you know, using the name of the product to sell their product. So they're trying to work around it, but they're either throwing out like actual canon lore, or they are not allowed to use it. So, for example, in the show, there is a race of people that are short and have hairy feet, and they're simple, but they're not hobbits because they can't use hobbits. And also because hobbits didn't actually exist for most of the early ages of Tolkien's world, which is another, you know, which is probably another complication, because, you know, the hobbits didn't become a thing until much later, like in the Third Age, I believe. And so this limits what they can do, but they're not interested in coming up with their own, you know, because they could just have written this story in some other made up fantasy setting, or found some other book that was, you know, maybe it has a following. I know that there are people who love sci-fi and fantasy, and they don't just read, like, you know, the most popular stuff. But the thing is that they wanted the Lord of the Rings name. They wanted the brand. So, you know, that's why they went with that. And that's why there are all these changes and all these problems. So if it's true that Tom Shippey was essentially being very critical, that is probably believable. You know, even if he was okay with a lot of the ways that they're changing things to come across as more in line with modernity and modern values, and, you know, maybe their own progressive values, maybe he was willing to forgive a lot of that. But because a lot of stuff in the lore is being tossed out, or it's not being used, or they're altering it, that might have been what made him say, well, wait a minute, you know, like I think we're doing too much. Someone in the chat says Harfoots are in the lore, though. Yes, but they don't use the word hobbit. That's what see, just pay attention, okay? They're using the word Harfoot as a workaround because they can't use the word hobbit. But they basically are hobbits in every way, except they're not called that. So they basically are, it's a game. It's the word games, okay? So yes, they probably are in the lore, but they're probably not like that. They probably don't look like that. They probably are very different. So that's the thing. Like, if you say, well, it's in the lore, well, then they're going to just do whatever they want with it because you have accepted those terms. So, you know, you should be like, well, wait a minute. Even though it's using the same word to describe it, nothing about this resembles the source material. So you know, and people, I think in general, you know, they can be very protective of source material if they very much enjoy it and they admire it. And I don't think that that's unfair. And I know that, like, you know, people take liberties all the time, and some people are more forgiving of some things than others. But, you know, when you're fundamentally altering, like, the DNA of what it is you're messing with, I think that people getting really upset about that is completely fair. All right. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, let's go a little bit further into the article.
Yeah. Let's
go
a little further.
Are definitely more of a Tolkien scholar than I am.
Well, I'm not really. Like, I mean, I watch I've watched videos that other people have made about the lore, and they really know it, you know. And I'm actually really impressed because, like, I had no idea. And this is one thing I will say about Tolkien, that I have to say is extremely admirable. I had no idea just how much work he puts into the building of his world, and it goes because he could have just told the story of the Hobbit, and that would have been it. And he wouldn't have to explain, you know, anything about dragons or dwarves or whatever. He could have just told it as a sort of like a fairy tale in a vacuum, right? I mean, because that's most fairy tales do exist in a vacuum. Like they're just, you know, nobody knows like the deep lore on the witch in the candy gingerbread castle or gingerbread house in the middle of the woods that Hansel and Gretel went to go. We don't know her story, but it's, you know, you tell enough to make it work. And then you understand like the deep symbolism of all that and what it represents. And that's what makes the stories, you know, so persistent. Like why we still know them. We still know Cinderella. We, you know, the Princess and the Frog, etc. So, but Tolkien did so much work. And I think one of the reasons for it was that, you know, he started off, he was just like a language guy, you know, and he decided, I'm gonna write a fairy tale for basically English people. Like I'm gonna make a world for us, our Anglo, you know, Western English people. And he included various pagan myths and, you know, stuff that like predates sort of Christianity coming to, you know, Europe, and he put that in there. But he also, you know, included, because he himself was a very devoutly religious man, he put in things, I wouldn't say to symbolize like that, because he never liked the idea of allegory or you know, making things intentionally to resemble things of his time. He was very much against that.
Like
because,
Narnia, eh?
yeah, well, even like, yeah, I mean, see that. Well, that's the thing about C.S. Lewis. Like Tolkien and Lewis, they knew each other, and Lewis was more like on the nose with the stuff he wanted to say. it was very much on the nose, right? And Tolkien was like, he actually had criticisms of Lewis for that, you know, because he said that something to the effect of, you know, if you do it that way, then people are looking for that. But if you do it this, you know, the way that I'm doing it, like, or the way he believed it should be done, it could be a lot subtler, and by that it could be seen as more universal, more speaking to the human experience on the whole, instead of like, you know, making these direct comparisons, you know. And I don't like, I mean, I still think that Lewis is great too. I mean, I only ever read Chronicles of Narnia, but he wrote a really great story called The Screw Tape Letters that I want to read as well. And that, again, that's kind of overt, but I think that it also has its own value. But again, it doesn't have the lasting endurance that Tolkien's work has. And I think that part of it is because, like, anyone could read it and they would be sucked into it. They would get drawn in and they would love that story. And whether you read the books or you watched the films or you watched the animated film from, you know, Ralph Bakshi back in the day.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did too. I used to watch it on TV. But, you know, and of course they were all putting their own little like twist on it, you know, but in general, in the spirit of what it was, it stayed consistent. So anyway, so he's talking about, he complained about the lore, according to this rumor. Not only would Maholo detail this rumor regarding Shippey's firing, but he would also excoriate Prime Video for including nudity in the show, as revealed in a number of behind-the-scenes photos from the production, as well as a newly released photo from the show. Mulho says the professor never once hinted at carnal nudity or lascivious sexuality ever in his writing, period, end of statement. Which is true. I mean, not just because Tolkien probably didn't think it was appropriate, but also because he likely didn't think it was necessary to tell his story. And He wanted this to be something that children would, grow up with. So even though his target audience wasn't specifically children, it was meant for everyone, and so like because of that, obviously he would leave that kind of thing out. And again, what would that serve? Like if you had a scene where Sam was banging Rosie Cotton with ribbons in her hair, like why do we don't even need to see that. Like that's irrelevant. We just see them later with their kids, so we know that he did the deed, but it's not like it's important to the plot. But again, this is just my thinking. I believe that many people believe today in order for something to be considered adult, it has to have like 18 and up only, imagery in it, basically. So, and like, doesn't that kind of throw Tolkien's work, like, under the bus? Like what's funny about him is that he's like he was a World War I veteran, and then he came back from that god awful, probably more violent war than World War II, even though World War II tends to be one that people talk about more often. And he came back and wrote this fairy tale world, and that is what everyone really loves him for. I think that maybe even in that regard, like telling this story is an act of heroism. And I know it seems like odd considering he's a World War I vet that I believe was struggling with PTSD. I think that is still tremendous. Like the impact on our culture is just massive. And I'm not even English. I'm sure that in England it's even more, of an impactful thing. So...
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get a little bit more into the article. And
all right.
So I just want to remind everyone we are doing our monthly fundraiser. We only have like about 5 days left, so please do put a few shekels in the hat so we can continue to do this work. 9 years and counting. That's feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. If I have to, I will do some arm twisting at the half-hour mark, if nobody has gone and done and put something in the hat. So
yeah,
let's do it.
I got a super chat from Albert Nada Retro, gives us $2 Canadian and says, "It's a mouthful. That's what she said." Okay. Back to this. He later stated, quote, "This John Ronald Reuel Tolkien we're talking about, a man who never sold out his writing or what he believed for cheap thrills of exposed nipples," end quote. While specifically discussing the images, Mulho details, quote, "This is the exact opposite of what Patrick McKay told Vanity Fair in February." Then he quoted Vanity Fair, "So there will be Westerosi levels of violence and sex in Amazon's Middle Earth? In short, no." McKay says the goal was to make the show for everyone, for kids who are 11, 12, and 13, even though sometimes they might have to pull the blanket up over their eyes if it's a little too scary. A little too scary. I'm not worried about that. I know a lot of adults who wouldn't let their kids see that. I wouldn't let mine, absolutely not. Especially as it dishonors the professor's writings. It's repulsive. In letter 131 to Milton Waldman. So, there's all these letters that people have kept that Tolkien's written to people when that's how, gentlemen spoke to each other, I guess. Tolkien wrote the following quote, "For reasons which I will not elaborate, that seems to me fatal. Myth and fairy story must, as all art, reflect and contain in solution elements of moral and religious truth or error, but not explicit, not in the known form of the primary real world. I am speaking, of course, of our present situation, not of ancient pagan or pre-Christian days. And I will not repeat what I tried to say in my essay, which you read," end quote. The Catechism of the Catholic Church makes it clear all baptized are called to chastity. The Christian has put on Christ the model for all chastity. All Christ's faithful are called to lead a chaste life in keeping with their particular states of life, At the moment of his baptism, the Christian is pledged to lead his effective life in chastity, end quote. It goes on to identify a number of offenses against chastity, including lust, which, quote, is disordered desire for or inordinate enjoyment of sexual pleasure. Sexual pleasure is morally disordered when sought for itself, isolated from its procreative and unitive purposes, end quote. So I think that this is like, they're basically explaining like the logic or the spiritual reasons why Tolkien didn't want to put sexuality in his books. I don't know that that's necessary to do. Like, I mean, like whatever his reasons might be, I don't think they matter. They were his reasons. It's his art. It's his work. He can do whatever he wants. And I think that people who want to respect that work, they'd probably like not just throw all that out because they have like, they want to make it more like Game of Thrones, which is like what they said. They're trying to like, I think they're trying to like get like the best of both in their mind. So it needs to be Tolkien in branding, but Game of Thrones in terms of content. And because that's what I think. I didn't get past the first season of Game of Thrones, so not a fan. Okay, I got another super chat from Amasang from $2, and he says screeching feminists or screeching Nazgul. What's the difference?
You mean in terms of if nobody gets something in by 4:30. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Choose your poison.
Okay, so anyway, it immerses all who are involved in the illusion of a fantasy world. It is a grave offense. Civil authorities should prevent the production and distribution of pornographic materials, says the catechism approach. Asserts. Yeah, catechism asserts.
Catechism. So this is just basically quoting some stuff about Christianity and Christian approach to nudity and pornography.
Well, apparently they mention that apparently Prime already butchered the Wheel of Time, which I never, again, I didn't read that book and I didn't watch that film. So but I heard that, I've heard of it. What was that? Have you ever read it?
It's not a surprise. No, I haven't read it. The original premise sort of turned me off a bit. So I maybe I'll read it if
The Wheel of Time.
If I have a spare moment. I actually tend to prefer war fiction written by soldiers than anything else. Strangely now, but
I mean, I was thinking about that too. I think that people who come from a life of hardship, it doesn't necessarily have to be war, but that's one of the ways. I think that when they become writers, I do believe that there's something that they can like put into a story and into their characters and even into their world that makes it like, I think it's because they've seen things that most of us haven't. So, they're exploring the unfathomable.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So they have a closer relationship to the liminal. I've never really found, like, I can read literature written by soldiers, but if I can't stand the stuff that's just written by civilians, because I don't know. There's something about the depth of characterization that comes out of having been in situations of extreme hardship. Like, you really seem to know people after that. But anyway, that's just a little aside. So shall we finish this?
Yeah, sure. So again, they tell us, no, there's not going to be any types of Game of Thrones style sex. And then they bring on an intimacy coordinator, which is basically like a person that helps actors do sex scenes. So they actually have an intimacy coordinator on the show. So that kind of tells you, it's either going to be in it or it's going to be heavily suggested. They're saying that this is just for some of the kissing scenes. not for example, the LGBTQ scenes, which we are going to explore, not going to be for the nudity or sex scenes, which we are going to explore. No, but we hired an intimacy coordinator and they put out a casting notice in New Zealand, and then there's a screenshot of that. Yeah, I guess this article is mostly like someone writing about someone else's account of things. So I don't know that like I would want to necessarily like, respond to that. But I will say that I think that the desire or the aim to try and be as respectful of the original creator as possible is just the best move. And if that person, and this is the thing, like, I think that honestly a lot of people involved with this project, they actually hate Tolkien. And I know it seems weird, but the truth is that like there are reasons to like for people to like his work while also not really like having a strong opinion on the man himself. But you would have to like understand that if it weren't for the man himself, the work wouldn't exist. So that means you have to take everything that comes with that, right? So it's not just like he wrote something that anybody else could have wrote. Obviously that's not the case. And his experiences in life and his beliefs, his values, and his ability to craft these massive worlds, like where he basically says, and someone in the chat mentioned this, but his whole thing is that, he wanted to create his own languages, and you can't create your own languages without that language having a history, and that's why he built these worlds. And, people literally speak Elvish, and there probably is like, it's just like people who speak Klingon, like they're just people who get really into it, and they want to show how much admiration they have for the level of work that one guy did to build all of this. And of course, what else is really interesting about Tolkien is, because I'm not going to forget the fact that this is a man at the end of the day, and they're kind of shitting on this guy. His son, Christopher Tolkien, was so incredibly protective of his father's work, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that Christopher Tolkien grew up having these stories read to him by his father, right? And so he has like because he passed away not long ago, a special place in his heart for these stories that his father wrote. And in many ways, Tolkien wrote this stuff for his kids, although he wanted to share it with the world. And I think that from the perspective of the people who work at these companies like Amazon and in other Hollywood areas, like because it's everywhere, there is a general hostility towards the past, and in particular, as it relates to men's contributions, as it relates to Western men, religious Western men, white religious Western men, and Tolkien's one of those people. If they could, they would come after C.S. Lewis as well. Except that I don't think that the C.S. Lewis brand is as strong right now as Tolkien's is. And that's because of Peter Jackson. But, in my opinion anyway. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And yeah, I think that's basically what it is. They're just treating this like a corporate property. And they're thinking, well, people like Game of Thrones, and they like the sex and all of the violence, and let's and they like the Lord of the Rings. Let's shove these two together. That'll do. People will love that.
Yeah. And they don't even know, I mean, obviously they don't really know why people love it. They just think, oh, this is this worked. And so like that's how we know that we're gonna get like a pale imitation, because no one is thinking about it that well. I think there's this maybe it's an arrogant presumption that you can just say, well, I'm a writer for Hollywood or for Amazon or for whatever, right? And they're like my writing ability, my ability to tell stories and plot and all that is just as good as J.R.R. Tolkien. And it's obviously not even close. But there's so much arrogance. And then they think, well, I'll make up for, my lack of skill by throwing in other things. Like I'll make this woman into a warrior queen, and I'll put in some people of color, and I'll put these things in and all these other elements that frankly don't make sense. But if you criticize me, then I can use this against you. And because they not only have a low opinion of the original author of these stories, because they think that they're basically like on par, but they also have a low opinion of the audience because they believe that the audience will just eat it up and that they don't care. But one of the things that I thought was really hilarious, though, about this particular, upcoming product is that people are not responding very well, but it's also quite hilarious. So I wanted to share with you some comments, the comment section under the YouTube trailer for for this show, the latest trailer, and the comments are fucking funny. So they're all okay. So originally, a while back when they initially teased it, all of the comments that people were putting in were simply a quote by Tolkien that said, evil cannot create anything new. It can only take that which was created by good people, and they corrupt it or twist it to their own services, to their own purposes, right? And this is something that Tolkien himself said, which is why, by the way, he and his family were super protective of the Lord of the Rings, Hobbit properties, very protective of Middle Earth stuff. And then when J.R. Tolkien passed, and it was Christopher Tolkien, he continued that legacy. He's like, I'm not going to let you vultures get to my father's property. And he did that until he died. And then I guess the estate just, said whatever, right? So that's why we're in the place that we're at now. So the father and the son did everything they could. And now, whoever's left, they just either didn't care enough or they forgot, why it was important to protect. So anyway, so that the first thing was, the first trailer did that. And apparently people, they were removing those comments, mass reporting people. There were articles where they were like, oh, these people are afraid of change and the usual stuff, right? They're attacking us. We're, Amazon, the billion-dollar company, we're victims of, the fan base that doesn't like what we're doing. And so they, there was a bunch of drama with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't that fascinating how corporations have used this woke stuff to frame themselves as being victims of their consumers?
Yeah. It's not
customers.
Yeah. It's in the mentality of the showrunners and their writers and the actors. They all believe that they're so on the right side of history that no criticism can be seen as valid, even though just about all of the criticism they got is valid. It's not, it's not based in sexism. It's not based in any of this other garbage. It's just them saying, this isn't what he wrote. This is not what he intended. Why don't you know the work? Right. And, and they're like, no, you're doing this to me because I'm a disabled neurodivergent woman of color, that is non-binary. That's why you're doing this to me. And it's like, no, we don't care about you. we care about the property. So here's what they did. So that with this newest trailer, instead of taking the Tolkien quote, because they can be accused of being bots, and which is another thing that they were being accused of because everyone was saying the same quote over and over and over, they decided to essentially release fake spoilers from the show that are so absurd, and hilarious.
Boy, that sounds like that'd be a lot of fun to go through.
Yeah. Oh, these are fun. Yeah. So here's one.
By the way,
go ahead.
Just so you guys know, we might have to cut this show a bit shorter because I'm not comfortable standing.
Are you standing right now?
Yeah, I'm standing right now, and I can't really sit because then I'll get like a migraine from straining my back. I'm not comfortable standing because I hurt my leg, and it's still bothering me. It actually didn't bother me as much during the Beat Saber as it is now. But I'll do this for as long as I can. I do want to thank somebody actually went to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. It's Mocking Moniker, which I hope isn't your actual legal name, and he gave us $10. So thank you, Mocking Moniker, getting us a bit closer to our goal. And please do consider joining him and making sure that we can fund our shows for this month. Is at feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. I think you also got a super chow as well there, Brian.
Did you read a super chow?
Do you want me to read the super chow?
Yeah, because I can't look at them if I'm just
all right. Okay. We got this from Anon. Bring on, he gives us $5 and says, bring on the feminist shrills. The pain fuels me. It gives me focus. Okay.
Do you want me to do that?
Mocking Monica. Yeah, it sounds a little painful.
That sounds a little counterproductive. Okay. So yeah, so here are some of the Amazon Lord of the Rings of Power trailer comments. So Sean Murphy says, when Galadriel said, open Death Blossom petals, switches on, I literally got goosebumps. Like, this is how they write them all, right? When Sauron started singing I'm a Barbie girl after revealing how he lost weight on the Subway diet, I knew this show was for me. This is one of the shows of all time. The Eminem cameo sent chills down my spine.
Oh my god.
And they just reference like other movies, you know, that have like moments in them. So here's another one. When that flaming refrigerator hit the ground and blew open and Gandalf rolled out, I did an actual spit take.
I should check to see what the ratio is. Send me that link.
Well, you can't. I'll send it, but I don't think you can look at the dislikes.
Oh, I can.
Oh, okay.
I can. And I can even send you a screenshot.
Yeah.
I have the skills. I have the means. I have the power.
All right, give me a second here. I'll just quickly throw it in the live show chat.
All right. Going in there.
So it's in there. Okay.
Yep. I can't wait to see this ratio.
Okay. So then someone said, oh
my god,
there's got to be.
That's the guys, you gotta step up your game. This ratio isn't good enough.
Yeah, people can do better.
You can do way better. It's 862 likes to 3,100 dislikes.
Where's the?
No, I have a Chrome thingy that but I'll send you a screen. Oops.
Oh, sure. It's like an extension. So how many likes and how many dislikes again?
Okay, 862 likes and 3,100 dislikes. And the thing is that, when they did the whole thing where getting rid of the dislikes, that a lot of people got sort of disheartened. They don't dislike it as much, but then you can sort of tell that it's really not getting a lot of attention because it's only got 800 likes, basically. So no people. If I were Amazon, I would look at that and say, some loss cutting might be in order here.
Yeah.
Maybe we should think more carefully about what we're doing. No, they're not going to do it. They're just going to double down on everybody's a racist because they don't like my property. Like they don't.
Well, yeah. Again, I don't know. I think that they believe that all media, no matter where it came from, no matter how old it is, how beloved it is, all of it can be essentially just reshaped into whatever they want. And so when people get protective, they get upset about it because they're like, well, this isn't special. And I think it's because they want to leave their mark. I mean, it's like I said before, if you wanted to tell a story, then tell the story. But if you want to use other properties that have existed before, then that is going to come with some
Baggage.
degree of, well, not just baggage, but like some degree of responsibility, right? So you can't make an adaptation of something and then throw out everything that the adaptation is what makes it what it is, right? And like this has been the problem for years and years, and some of it goes back to the 90s, but for other reasons. Maybe like there was an adaptation of Judge Dredd in the 90s with Sylvester Stallone, and I always talk about how what the main problem with that was that Stallone wanted FaceTime. So he takes off Judge Dredd's helmet, which if you read the comics, that never happens. But it was for that, right? So not like, as I guess you could say, it's basically more of an ego reason to do it, as opposed to say, oh, I just don't have any respect for this property. But still a problem, and still something people complained about, and I think justifiably so. So, but like, yeah, I don't think that there is a desire for people to treat everything just like they do people, as blank slates that you can just do whatever you want with. And, because you put the brand on there, people are supposed to basically just be okay with that. So,
yeah.
And, they don't have to. So anyway,
let's do a few more.
Yeah. So I want to find some of the other funny ones. The part where Poe says somehow Sauron has returned gives me chills. That's a reference to Star Wars Episode 9. Let me see. There were so many, but now I'm not seeing as many. It was like every comment. They must be deleting. They must be deleting comments.
Probably.
Again. Yeah.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt they're trimming.
Come on. Okay, I might have another one. Somebody a friend of mine sent me a message of one that I thought was pretty funny.
Here's one. If you sort by newest, you should do Genki Sudo.
All right,
he's doing a great one. Yeah, sort by newest.
Yeah, let me go to sort it by newest first. I think they are kind of come on.
Yeah. YouTube.
I'm not seeing it.
All right, I'll read it. Genki Sudo, 1 hour ago. Lots of toxic white male fans posting their usual predictable comments. I, for one, can't wait for this new progressive reimagining of Tolkien's deeply problematic and white supremacist vision. This new vision corrects Tolkien's vision and shows the world we all want to live in, a brave and stunning utopia where only the correct opinions are tolerated. I don't think that...
No, it's not a joke. I mean, that is a joke. That is a joke.
I suspect that might be slightly sarcastic.
Yeah. Here's one that my friend copy pasted into my Discord. Tears flowed from my eyes like the waters of brewing, and when Galadriel said, "Give it up, Sauron. I have the high ground." And Sauron answered, "My spidey senses are tingling. Just wow. Truly a love letter to Tolkien and his fans." But I mean, it's so true. It's so true. And this is like, God, I can't find any more. It was basically every post, I'm sorry. Unless Eminem Sauron, of course, the whitest guy is the bad guy. What else could we have expected from woke trash? Okay.
I watched the trailer and it struck me as not having any real emotional resonance. Not any strength of purpose. It just looked like, I called it a Apple TV like montage.
Yeah.
It just another place. For example, they're trying to generate a sense of threat with these orcs, and you show them, marching like maybe 4x4 on a very precarious mountain path. I'm like, are you trying to present a sense of threat or a sense that the orcs are under threat because I'm
Yeah.
this mountain pass has no guardrails. I'm a little worried for it might end up falling into the pit. It's like that doesn't generate a sense of threat. It doesn't.
Right.
You have to show them like surrounding something like dozens and dozens deep surrounding your like little posse of hobbits or something, not showing them struggling up a freaking alpine pass. That's ridiculous. We're now switching to the orcs to see how they're doing being destroyed by the elements. Will they make it?
Okay, I think the actual version of this video that I was talking about is the Amazon Prime Video YouTube page, and I think that this one I was looking at wasn't that. So this one has more comments. So here's one. This trailer is so stunning, so brave. We finally have a true adaptation of J.K. Rowling's Hunger Games, which is a jab at J.K. Rowling and at Hunger Games and at Amazon at the same time. When Galadriel turns on the elves and says, "It's Morbin time," proceeding to kill Legolas, I almost cried. But when Jack Black shows up with the pick of destiny, defeating Galadriel and reviving Legolas, I broke down. What a cinematic masterpiece. Tolkien could have written this. The part where Sauron says, "I'll be back," then sinks into a Mount Doom doing an OK sign with his hand is pure gold. Tolkien could never have come up with such an intricately woven text. Yeah, and it just keeps going. Like it, when the part where, what?
It's good. What? It's good. You guys are really, whoever's doing this is really
it's
no
funny.
selling this.
This is like these posts are better than the show is going to be.
Yeah, I know. The writing in the comments is superior to what I'm seeing in what I've seen of the show.
Yes.
The trailer doesn't grip me at all. I'm like, well, that's very, very pretty landscapes, but there's no sense of danger. There's no sense of any quality of anything. Except I did find Galadriel really annoying. There was that.
Well,
I had that
she's probably going to be. But, I mean, it's just like a pale imitation. Like, why wouldn't you just go watch the movies? Like, why, who was going to be, or read the books. Like, but who's going to, like, just because there are some people who just want to consume new content, why would they subject themselves to things that are so, like, mediocre when they could just go? I mean, they're literally trying to copy all of the same beats anyway. They even have, like, little furry people, marching, going on a walk, somewhere. Like, it may not be, like, to deliver the ring to Mordor, but it doesn't matter. They're doing the same beats. They're basically like, we're going to take some, like, small people that live in a small community that's not involved with the politics of men and elves and dwarves, and they're going to have to leave their home and go on a walk. And it's like, well, there's already a movie about that. Like, well, there's 2 of them. I mean, like, why don't you just go watch those?
And also
this is going to make people... Oh, go ahead.
The visuals, the striking visuals in the original movies of this tell a much more powerful emotional story.
Yeah.
But, I don't think we need to say this because I think that the people who are annoyed are justifiably annoyed and very clever about it. And then the people who are like, well, I'm just going to see what happens. They're going to be annoyed legitimately when they watch it.
Yeah. Either that or they're
going to be the cinematic equivalent of snot. Just slides down your throat and disappears in your intestines.
Yeah. I know it is gross. Or they're going to try and justify it to themselves. Well, yeah, it was all right. I mean, it wasn't that bad. I mean, yeah, it's something to do. This is another thing that it's something to do. I just want to watch something. And that's the kind of shit that actually, and there's a lot of people that do that, and that's the kind of shit that lets companies like Amazon go, well, as long as there are some people that have standards low enough that they'll watch it no matter what it is, no matter how little effort we put in, no matter how much we don't care about the source material, as long as there are people who are like, it's something to do, I guess I didn't hate it, like where it had problems, but then all that does is it tells them to keep on churning out garbage, and that's what we're going to keep getting because you keep giving them money for it. So, even if you're, again, just filling your day with shit to do when you could be doing literally anything else, you're basically telling them this is good enough. I'll take it.
If you want to fill your day with shit to do, why don't you find like a mediocre webcomic and, pay the guy read it. And support independent work. Like if it's just a matter of I need shit to do, just go support something other than gigantic corporations that are going to dry hump our literary tradition until there is absolutely nothing left of it. Go at least the mediocre webcomic creator on the internet is creating something original.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Lots of people are. So
what's going to happen when they render these properties completely unwatchable? What are you going to watch then? It's like the natives not killing all of the deer at once. You got to leave some to repopulate. You gotta encourage original stuff. Otherwise, at some point, you'll be on the internet or on your TV, and you'll be like, this is all totally unwatchable. And it'll be like Lord of the Stick Figures.
Yeah. Well, that would again that would probably be more fun than what they're doing. I think.
There can be only one.
That's I was. Here's another funny comment. It was so compelling the way Galadriel survived all that time stranded with nothing but a volleyball she named Elrond to keep her company. She even saw it through to deliver the last ring once she made it home. Really brought this story to life where Tolkien had struggled to find the words for it. So, reference to Castaway. The part where Kylo Ren tells Sauron that his parents were nobodies, but then Rocky Balboa swings into frame and declares, "I pity the fool," and bam, the theme song to Murder, She Wrote just starts blasting. Chills down my spine. Oh, wait, here's another one. The part where Gandalf was riding a velociraptor, who was riding a motorcycle, who was yelling, "Alan!" was truly breathtaking. Tolkien could weep that he himself could not imagine such an amazing scene.
Oh my goodness. Oh
yeah,
boy.
Yeah.
I think they should hire these people. Just do a montage of illustrations, all of these, and I'd watch it.
Here's a good one, because this person clearly knows, that there's a lot of feminism behind this production. That scene where Tom Bombadil, Gil-galad, Thrain the First, Morgoth, Frodo, Galadriel, and Radagast are sitting in that circle discussing their feelings with their therapist Amatar was absolutely gut-wrenching and tearfully emotional. They were all so strong in that moment. They're just sitting in a circle talking about their feelings. And then there was even 2 replies I want to see. More men need to speak about their mental health, pray hands emoji. But the Middle-earth VA just keeps prescribing all kinds of elixirs and potions. The part where Galadriel said, "We're going to need a bigger boat" to Dracula blew my goosebumps off. Such a beautiful respect.
That previous comment would actually make a really interesting premise for a story. Maybe a high fantasy set in a wizard, a wizard shock troop VA,
Yeah. Well, there's plenty to Yeah, I
Explore.
mean, again, yeah, this is but like these people, I mean, it's endless. Like, so you got to
Mm.
go to the Amazon Prime or the Prime Video YouTube channel and look this up because that's where the comments are. That scene
Yeah.
where Littlefinger tells Sauron chaos is a breadstick that you need to share with your enemies before he dipped one in glorious premium quality elven white chocolate brought tears to my eyes. Such a profound moment brought to life straight out of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Sticks. Amazing. Um,
Oh man. Well, here's the thing. When corporate uh I don't know what to call them, corporate money grubbers take beloved properties and churn out absolute wretched crap. There we can make lemonade out of those lemons because we can mock them
mhm.
to the billion.
Well, yeah, that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah.
Xeranx gives us $5 and says Brian doing a decent Bobcat gold weight was unexpected. I wasn't trying, but thank you. I never. Yeah, that sounds like doing a Bobcat gold weight would probably tear my throat up, to be honest. So, but I
Okay, so
appreciate the compliment.
we got another super chow,
Okay.
and I do have another thank you to give. We got another $10 from Unfortunately, Feed the Badger is really poking along today. So let's do the super chow. Oh
Go
wait,
ahead.
just Craig C, and that's all I'll say because I don't want to dox you, gives us $10. So thank you, Craig C. And if you would like to join our very generous supporters, it's once again feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. And I am going to read the super chow. Amasong gives us $5. I hope I pronounced that correctly. For example, while listening to HBR, I'm playing Warriors or Orochi 3 Ultimate as Ain from Dead or Alive. Aren't crossovers
Oh,
grand?
Ayane.
Ayane, okay.
Ayane.
Aren't
Yeah.
crossovers grand? Yeah. I okay. I think the appeal of Game of Thrones and the appeal of Lord of the Rings are incompatible.
Hmm.
I have a suspicion
Well,
that
I mean, I
so.
think that they. I'm gonna try to be really charitable to Game of Thrones because I'm not really a fan, but I think that they scratch different itches, is how I'd put it. Because I'm sure
Yes.
there are people who are fans of both, but they don't necessarily like just because you're a fan of both things doesn't mean that you're gonna be a bigger fan of both of those things slapped together into some third thing. I think that people are just gonna be like, yeah, for this kind of story, I appreciate that in isolation on its own, and the same is true for the other. Because most people who like Lord of the Rings, I think, also enjoyed Game of Thrones, either the books or the entire series or some of the series. So
Well, I think Lord of the Rings is very inspirational in terms of its moral story and
yeah,
overcoming evil within yourself, whereas Game of Thrones, from what I can tell, is much more uh revenge fantasy and getting down into being able to solve your problems with force kind of
well,
thing.
yeah, it's more like I get like some people would say it's more realistic, but I don't
Mhm.
know if I like that way of describing it because it's really just
Uh,
more sort of
Nobody,
brutal and
yeah,
cynical.
cynical.
Yeah,
And
but
really, honestly, that isn't realistic to our world because how many times in your life can you solve your problems by chopping off your problem's head?
yeah,
I would say once, and then you go to jail. So, for the
yeah.
most part, the idea that we have to overcome, that we should derive a sense of pride and fellowship in overcoming our own frailties is much more realistic to what we actually have to do in real life, you
Yeah, and
know?
I think it sort of speaks to what view fans of Game of Thrones like what their view of their world is because I do think that there is like a lot of cynicism in baked into
Mhm.
the setting, and I think that older folks maybe they think that that is more, even if it is a lot more brutal and violent than reality, but they think that that's more in line with reality because maybe they are a little bit cynical and Lord of the Rings is meant to be, despite all of the suffering that happens, it's meant to be a lot more optimistic and inspirational, like you said. It's supposed to. So some people think that optimism is not realistic. It's not mature.
Of course, it's realistic.
Well, yeah,
why
I think a lot of
we
people don't
have
believe
a
that.
cooperative structure that we exist in, and we can actually feasibly exist in? But that
Mhm.
moment, like the most powerful moment in the show, is when Sam lifts Frodo up and says, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you. That
Yeah.
is the essence of Lord of the Rings, in my opinion, of the
Mhm.
themes of Lord of the Rings. It's this idea of, even at Frodo's darkest moment, it's his friend that lifts him up and
Mhm.
steps in and helps him go that last mile. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very, very positive.
Yeah.
And I don't think, like, if you look at Game of Thrones and the level of themes and what it's actually saying, if you can say that Game of Thrones has themes, they're just incompatible with Lord of the Rings. And if these individuals understood storytelling, they would know that. They
Yeah.
would actually understand that you can't tell a Lord of the Rings story with a Game of the Thrones tone. It just, what is this mess that you have constructed? It's like trying to make spaghetti with Reese's Pieces meatballs.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Yuck. It just
No,
doesn't work.
not
And
delicious.
is not delicious. It's
Mm-mm.
just, they're incompatible on a fundamental level. And they don't realize this because they can't write. Like they
Right.
don't have talent.
Right.
All they have is self-righteousness. And it's sort of a very self-serving self-righteousness, because when people are like, you don't have talent and you're attempting to do something that requires a great deal more talent. Like, let's take away the idea of trying to mash up Lord of the Rings with Game of Thrones. Let's just look at the idea of taking Lord of the Rings and bringing other ethnicities into it. I'm not going to say races, because the ethnicities, the cultures are more important, in my opinion. If you were a good writer, you wouldn't do, and this is more into what they're doing in terms of the races. So if people don't know, they are making the Harfoots black, essentially, or many of them. But if you looked at this and you actually were interested in how Tolkien approached his stories and integrating this diversity into your story, you wouldn't do this. This is the most tone deaf and trivializing way of bringing other ethnicities, other races into Tolkien's story. What you would do is you would look to where they would make sense in the context of the story, build new cultures, new ethnicities, that, based on some of the stuff that's referenced, that he himself referenced, of the cultures of the East and the South. And that would be an amazing thing to do. Like, it's an amazingly exciting project to build that, to start developing, fleshing out other ethnicities from other parts of Middle Earth. I mean, any writer would be really excited about that and would want to do it right. Because I would be excited about that. Like, I would be excited to be able, because I love different cultures and different ethnicities, and I like their logic. And I think that if you're going to bring people who look that different, then you have to explain where they come from, because like, logically, realistically, people look different because they come from different regions. They eat different things. They have different climates. They're adapted to different resources. And if you're going to bring people in who are that different physically, you have to give them why? Otherwise it's a completely superficial way of approaching it. Don't they deserve their own cultures, their own ethnicities, their own religions, their own stories, their own cultural artifacts, and dances and whatever else you want to give them? I mean, don't they deserve that, rather than just being stuck in as some kind of meta commentary, which is really belittling? So it's like but they can't do that because they don't have the talent to do it. So they
Well,
hide their cowardice and their lack of talent behind this bombastic rhetoric, which they then jettison when it isn't useful to them. Okay, rant over.
Well, I was just going to say that the other thing is I don't really think they want to add to Tolkien's world. They just want to vandalize it. So, the argument that is always made about why, they will claim these changes to, inject black dwarves and black hobbits and female warrior queens or whatever it is that they're doing. Their number one go-to is that representation matters, and that if people don't see themselves, which is, by the way, a very narcissistic way of looking at the world, but we are dealing with narcissists, but they will say that if they don't see themselves in a property, then they don't feel like they can be, fans of the property. Like, I can't be a fan of Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons or, this show or whatever, because I don't see myself in the property. But that doesn't make sense, because if you're not a fan of the property because you've been excluded, then why would you feel, though, then it should be changed? Unless, of course, you were a fan, on some level, maybe you saw the movies and you just liked them, but there was something about you that was really bothered by the fact that there weren't enough people who look like you in it, that you feel like you need to go on a crusade to change things. But you couldn't possibly have been a fan without that obstacle that you claim is so overpowering for people. With, if that obstacle didn't exist, because that obstacle supposedly exists, then that means that no one who isn't a white English person could possibly get into Lord of the Rings. And that's just not true. Everyone loved it. And they didn't say, well, I don't see me in that. No one does that. So I think that the whole thing about the importance of representation is all a lie. It's all a lie. It's always been a lie, because if you're into something, it usually has nothing to do with the people in that thing looking like you or sharing in your culture or whatever. Usually nothing to do with it. Some people, they may have a preference for seeing, for enjoying things that have people in that does look like them. There are some people, but all in all, if something is well made, no one cares. If something is well made, and the thing is too, and this is I think this is actually quite insidious. There is this idea that if something is representative, if it's engaged in representation with the correct identity markers, whether it's based on skin color or gender or sexual proclivity, that somehow only through that can people of those groups become interested. And the reason why I think it's kind of sinister is that the best stories that are told, which come from wisdom, this is why I think the best stories are products of wisdom, because they talk about life experience and stuff like that, right? The best stories always speak to the human condition universally. They're not concerned with these little more very recent, modernist views of humanity that is all about this, division, that this whole here's the thing for white people, here's the thing for Asian people, here's the thing for brown people. That's a very recent phenomenon. Most of the time, if the story is good, nobody cares. People, Aladdin was a story about that was shared everywhere. Everyone knows it. It had nothing to do with, the skin color. Actually, the main character was supposedly Chinese, even though it has an Arabic theme to it, which is weird. But again, none of that mattered. And I think that when you get so hooked into this representation crap, you're missing out. You're missing out on so much more. This is so much bigger. And I think that it's that universal experience that people relate to with regards to these stories that actually brings us closer together. And all of that other stuff is intended to be divisive. So I don't think it's. I think that there is actually something really insidious about that. So
Well, it's not looking at things in terms of people relating to others on an emotional level because they're sympathetic, regardless of their skin tone. And
yeah.
it actually really breaks apart human fraternity. Like I said in my little intro that you could have diversity or increase diversity in Tolkien's world while keeping his general theme, which is the triumph of the human spirit through fellowship, and also keeping his lore and just moving it into the east and the south and those cultures, and you could just explore that. And you could probably do it in a way that is very authentic to the source material, yet also different and bringing something new in. If you keep to the themes and you keep to the tone, and you don't pretend like suddenly because you just want to put black people into Tolkien that skin is it has no skin color has no historical context. Okay, because
Hmm.
that's not true. The people who want to put black people into hobbits that were originally white don't believe that this is just a palette swap. They know it's deeper than that, so it becomes a meta statement on the original itself, and everybody knows that, and it makes it uncomfortable. But if you actually integrate it into the story, integrate it into the lore, I think everybody would be fine with that. I mean, there might
Yeah.
be people who would still be upset if you did like if you set a story about the Lord of the Rings in the South, maybe even like an African country resisting Sauron, um, in an all black cast, but with the same themes and the same tone and some of the same story elements. I think you could do that, and it could work. And if it makes sense in the context, then I think that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you couldn't stretch it that far. But, that's something that I would do as a writer, because I want to do things that are difficult, not easy. And I think what they're doing is easy, and easy art is crappy art, to be honest. Anyway,
Yeah.
we
Um.
got some more super
Yeah.
chats
I got
and
I got a super chat just now.
Oh, and Super Chow. Okay, so we got another $10. Thank you, from Midnight Motorcycling. Thank you, Midnight Motorcycling. And again, if you want to join our very, very generous supporters who make sure that we can continue to do this work, I think we're a pretty unique voice. Please go to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. No, I don't think. I know we are. We are a unique voice in the realm of discussing social justice and current politics. And we also got a Super Chow. I will read that now. Amasang gives us $5 again and says it reminds me of what Tolkien said with regard to the question, what if Gandalf took the ring? Suggesting that Gandalf would behave with the intent to be righteous, but he would become self-righteous, ordering the world in a way that he thought was best because he knows best. And incidentally, the ring also has shades of Christ's temptations too, because Satan
Hmm.
originally tempted Christ with becoming a king of all the world.
Well, it's literally
And
that, because I think that
yeah,
in many stories, Satan, in the biblical sense, like he can only whisper to people.
hmm
Like he can't. He basically tries to tempt them. And in Lord of the Rings, the ring literally does that, right?
mm,
It says,
it
it
whispers.
speaks to the, yeah, it whispers, right? So it literally is obviously a reference to that, but of course Tolkien, being a really religious guy, couldn't like tell a story and that not be the case, right? Because
Mm,
that's what he believes about the nature of evil. So he's going to put it
well,
in
yeah.
his story, even if he's not literally saying, yeah, this is like obviously a reference to Satan. Um,
Mm.
so yeah.
Okay. All right. So you got your super
Yeah,
chow
I got a
chat.
super chat as well. So Meredith Chi gives us $5 and says the problem with the Lord of the Rings changes is that the original story already has racial diversity. It's just that the races aren't based on the color of their skin. Yeah, well, that's why
Yeah.
they're elves, dwarves, men, and hobbits. Again, I gotta say that all of that stuff that Allison was talking about is completely plausible. provided that there are enough gaps that you could fill it with something. But the thing is that the people we're dealing with, they have no interest in doing that. They want to
That's too
replace.
creative.
They're not creative, but also they're not interested in the challenge. They just want to take this brand and reshape it to their own purposes. And that's it. That's I mean, I don't want to like come across as too accusatory to these folks, but this is literally what Tolkien meant when he said evil can't create anything new. It can only repurpose that which has been created by good people. And so that this is like, and you can like see this across a ton of different things, right? It's if someone isn't creating something that they believe in that comes from their heart, and they're instead grasping, and they don't have to necessarily be corporate. There's plenty of people that just can't do this. They're just grasping at stuff that exists, and then they're repurposing it for their own purposes. And of course, they're altering things to essentially satisfy their ego. Then, yeah, that they're doing the same thing. That's why I call this, well, I've heard this term thrown around, but cultural vandalism is basically the best way to describe it, because it's not making anything, and the people who put this out, they don't want to make anything. Because they certainly could, but they either can't do it or they don't want to do it. And I'm more inclined to believe that they just don't want to, because then they would have to actually have to compete. Then they would actually have to make something that people want to read about or watch or whatever. And they can't do it because they just don't have the ability, and they have no interest in the ability.
What I've noticed is that in a lot of cases, people will hide a lack of skill or a lack of talent or cowardice behind this facade of self-righteousness. And what I said in the original short that I put up to sort of like advertise this, that when they say like, oh, well, we're just swapping out, we're basically just swapping out skin tone so people feel represented. It doesn't mean anything. It's like that they're actually abandoning their own principles, that skin tone does mean something historically, and that the historical meaning of races is so important that people have to be locked into moral categories based on how their race was treated by other races in the past. And yet they jettison that principle as soon as it requires them to do any kind of work and actually integrate these people into the story in a way that is actually sort of respectful of where differences come from, why they exist, and isn't just some kind of meta statement that confuses the hell out of people and jumps them out of the story. That's really what's happening here. Like if you had a ranger from one of the southern civilizations that was dark skinned, but had a plausible black story that made sense in the world, nobody would be jarred out of the story by that. But when you have like black hobbits who are the direct ancestors of the hobbits, Harfoots, sorry, that are the direct ancestors of the hobbits that we see in the movies, it's like,
well, again, yeah, it's arbitrary. It's just arbitrary.
Yeah. And because it's arbitrary, it is something that jars people out of the story.
Yeah.
They know why it's there, but it has no story. It's like you put in a spaceship into Middle Earth, and everybody's like, how did that get there?
Yeah, exactly.
They're it like, breaks the story logic. It breaks the story logic.
That's the thing, and it actually, like, and I'm fairly certain this isn't the most. It's actually a more common sentiment that I wish actually was. Oh my God, we got some spam in the chat. Let me block this person. Put them in timeout. What I don't get is that, like, how is it you could be, and this is the thing that I do see sometimes, you could be like a fan of Lord of the Rings. You've watched all the films, you've read the books, you know the lore, you've looked at it, you're just a gigantic fanboy, and you also happen to be a minority. And then they will put out this new trailer and you'll say, "Oh, thank God, finally. Finally, I see myself in this thing. Oh, now I can really enjoy it." Like that literally makes no sense. You were either always a fan and that didn't matter, or you are and now you're seeing this and you're saying, "Why are you guys doing this?" Because like I think that should be the reaction. I think that people who are in fact minorities who are fans of the original source material should be enraged that they're pandering to them like this, because they pandering. Well, it's tokenizing, it's pandering, it's
yeah, definitely. But this is something that occurred to me. I just want to get it out because otherwise it might float away down the stream of my consciousness. When they do this, they are actually emphasizing that the original property is not for the people they're supposedly including.
Yeah.
Which is never the case.
Of course not.
It was never the case. I mean, these are supposed to be human stories that are accessible to everyone. And I think that if you actually brought people of other ethnicities and cultures and skin tones into the story in a way that's consistent with the story logic, then you don't run afoul of essentially retroactively telling all of the non-white fans of Tolkien, "Oh yeah, these stories were never for you." What a horrible thing to say. Like, just because the main characters were white because the guy who wrote it was white doesn't mean that the stories aren't for everyone. You know?
Right.
And when you just slam in these characters with inexplicable skin tones because you're making a meta statement and everybody's going to be jarred out of the story because they know you're making a meta statement, you are actually telling people retroactively these stories weren't for you. So now they're sort of for you. I mean, this is our gracious, making it work for you. We're not going to give these people who represent your ethnicities, your races, we're not going to give them backgrounds. We're not going to give them cultures. We're not giving them context, and we're not going to give them a story, a non-story breaking reason for being there. No, we don't need to do that. It's palette swapping.
Well, yeah, but the unfortunately, some people do think that this is like now there's something for them. But I don't know like how much of that is real. Like I said, if you were a fan of something, that shit should never have mattered. And that goes in every direction, right? Like according to their logic, I'm not allowed to be a fan of like Blade because the main character is black and I'm not black. So I should not feel welcomed to enjoy that. And that literally makes no sense. So, I don't, one of the reasons why I don't bother trying to make an argument to, how you can do the diversity thing and the representation thing well is that it's not important. It's probably the least important factor of this whole thing. And frankly, if you go down that road, you're essentially telling them it's okay to do this for these reasons, but it's not. Like, just the story is the point, not any of this other crap. This is all like, it's all meant to, essentially it distracts, like, and they use it that way. I mean, they tell really bad stories with really diverse characters, and then they put the diversity up front so you can't criticize the crap that's come out of it. And it's almost like the people involved with that, they don't care what the quality is. They just want to they want to have money. Well, I don't even know if they want to make money, because if you wanted to make money, you tell a good story, because then you'll get more. Like Tom Cruise, made Top Gun. I don't know how good the story is in that, but I mean, the first one wasn't, exactly mind-blowing, but he made a film. He didn't attack his fan base. He didn't disrespect the source material, however, sort of basic it was. He didn't use it as a soapbox for his, for his belief system. And it made over $1 billion, and it didn't even go to China. So it made like crazy. It's still making money. It's still in theaters. So it's almost like if like profit is your primary motive, then making a good product is your primary objective. So, I don't even think that these people care about money. I mean, they literally Amazon got rich because it just so happened that the Schman Schmemic, basically killed all their competition and people were going to them for help, and now they've got money to burn. And, so I don't even think they're really that concerned with profit, because if they were, they wouldn't be giving us garbage. So I think it's mostly it's ideological. I think that this is the
Yeah.
truth about Disney, about the Marvel movies, about everything. Like, it's mostly people that are in positions of creative control that want to use it to sell the message. And I don't know if the bean counters are going to figure this out at some point, when they're like, wow, we've been, our stock is in the toilet. What's going on here? Because,
Well,
go ahead.
they probably want to get BlackRock money, but I would add that there is sort of I think that there's a lot of women who want to see this kind of stuff in these properties, and they
Sure.
think that they want to appeal to that particular audience. The only problem is that I think that they're wrong.
They are
Because
wrong.
these women don't want to look at it either. They don't want that either.
No. I agree. I think this is actually the product of a lot of women in positions of cultural influence. I think that's mostly what this is. In the entertainment industry, but not just there, like, all over the place. The way that they're changing businesses, corporations, and smaller companies, with all of this stuff in HR, and this stuff with the DIE initiatives, and the social credit score, whatever it's called, ESG.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that that's mostly driven by women.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think that what they think is that all of this stuff is going to appeal to a female audience.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it does.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely not.
I think even women, they may talk about this stuff in terms of social jockeying, but I think when it comes down to their actual fiction, what attracted them to Lord of the Rings was these powerful emotional relationships, and this stuff is absent that.
Yeah.
And these powerful loyalty and honor and sense of fellowship and brothers in arms, like, that's attractive. Replacing it with palette swapping and LGBT themes and all of this other stuff, I don't think it's going to really hold the audience that they may think that they're going to hold, if they're not just going for BlackRock money with woke points. So anyway, yeah. I think that I'll see if there's we did get another super chow, so thank you for that. And once again, we are doing our monthly fundraiser, so if you are able to, please go to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz and put a few shekels in the hat for our ability to keep going. We got an anonymous $10, so thank you, anonymous, for that $10. And then George Mick gave us $10 and says, the reason The Hobbit was originally a total failure was there were no hobbits at the time to read it.
Yeah, that's why nobody went to the theater to see it, because there was no hobbits or dwarves spent any money on that.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we can't identify with them if they don't look like us. But we're talking about hobbits and elves.
Yeah, non-human people.
And like eagles and walking trees.
Yeah, like, well, again, yeah. So, how did that movie make all that money when there was no representation? I mean, it's almost like people wanted to watch it because they like it. But there is something else that you touched on.
That the movie would appeal to someone like me, because I'm sort of hobbit-sized, almost.
Yeah, or any of the Welsh. But yes, but you touched on something that sort of relates to something else I was thinking about when you said that, like, this is like, there is like a feminine sentiment that runs through a lot of this, but it's funny because women won't, they'll say, yeah, this is great, like, oh, my representation, my female empowerment, etc., but they don't actually want to watch that stuff. So instead, it's just about like signaling to people that they like this stuff because it feels good and it gives them a sense of self-righteousness. But ultimately, like, all of this involves essentially tearing away at the appeal it has to men, even more, even though women generally women are just fine enjoying media made for men, or made with
Yes.
maybe not even for men, but just made with a positive and inspiring
Message, yeah.
masculine message in it, like or just masculinity, like a positive masculine, and women will want to watch that too, like they'll. So it's not like a show or a film that has a male cast and they're doing heroic things in the story. It's not as if that's only made to appeal to men, although it will generally appeal to men, because women also want to see it. Like, and in the other way, it goes the other way too. Like if you wanted to see like like a good adaptation of a Jane Austen novel or something, which if you guys haven't seen it, you should check out. Janice Fiamengo made a great video about Jane Austen where she explains that Jane Austen's not a feminist, even though her work is often framed as feminist. But
Brian, we should replace Jane Austen, and it should all be male little people who are black.
Yeah, let's just replace Jane Austen with that. But like I've watched my fair share of good dramas and even like romances, as long as, and it's the same thing, as long as what I'm looking at is something that's archetypally attractive in all the characters, male and female. And generally films that men like will have positive or attractive or appealing portrayals of the feminine, even though it may have a focus on the masculine. And so well,
there's always a certain amount of appreciation. Like men know how to appreciate the feminine in a way that I think women really struggle with appreciating the masculine. Or at least not condemning it. But I get what you mean. It's like, why don't we just enjoy telling good stories? And I take what you mean when you said, when I talk about integrating other ethnicities into Lord of the Rings, I look at it as a challenge.
I know.
Writerly.
It's like a problem solving exercise. Like, how could you do this? Right.
How could you do it? And how could you do it well in a way that it doesn't break the story, doesn't turn it into some kind of meta joke, which actually trivializes the original minority audience for the work. Because when you don't integrate it into the story, you're essentially saying, yeah, this story was never about you until now. And now it is. There you go.
Yep.
Pat. Yeah. It's like gross. That's gross. Be a little bit more honorable towards both what you're doing and the people you say you're doing it for. But I think that, can we, like, do you think that's good? Is it good? We're good?
I think we're good. Yeah. Do you want to stop? Is that what you're saying?
No.
I didn't
want to say the word. No, I didn't want to say the word. Word of death.
I think this is good. We've explored it. I guess like one last thing I'll say is that if you watch the films, which I think Peter Jackson got probably like 90% right. I know that there's things people didn't like Arwen has a bigger role than she's supposed to, and I think that it's fair. I don't think that's unfair. But
improved that, I think, between the two, right? Because the first one, she was like she had more of an action role, and then they went back and they were like, well, don't do that.
Yeah, no, they made her role smaller as the films go on. But in the first,
not smaller, but feminine, as opposed to.
I know. Well, and also just more in line with what Tolkien wrote. But like in in the first movie, I think that there was a little bit of that, oh, we got to give her a girl power moment, like, because that didn't happen in the book. It was I think it was the elf
Erwin
guy. I can't.
Yeah, no. Oh God.
Why am I forgetting well? Anyway,
Legolas.
No, not Legolas. Hugo Weaving's character. It was
okay.
The guy from Rivendell. But anyway, I think it was supposed to be him, or maybe some other elf that actually like helps Frodo escape the ring wraiths. But they made it Arwen, and I think it was because there was probably a little bit of a desire to give her a woman moment. And it was one of the highlights of the film. Elrond, thank you. It was one of the highlights of the film, but but it was a bit, he didn't write that, so there were people who were like, yeah, that's not how it actually happened. And there's plenty of stuff like that, but I think that that was just a little thing, right? It's a little thing. It's forgivable for the most part, but I think that
this
it
seems more
stands.
unforgivable.
Yeah, it seems, well, that this is obviously a lot more unforgivable, but that does seem, I think, there was a little bit of a, because they could have done this with anyone, and they chose the female elf, which was basically, one of the prominent female characters of the story at that point. So, but then they did, like, the other stuff is fine. Like, I don't know if the I am no man bit is a little, like, over cheesed.
I think it was in the original, though.
It was. It was. But I the way, I don't know if the way it was shot is identical to what Tolkien wrote, because apparently what actually killed the Witch King wasn't Éowyn. It was the Merry, who had, like, this dagger, or Pippin. I don't remember which. I think it was Pippin. No, it was Merry. It was Merry. But I think that it was him that actually is responsible, not her. But the film makes it look like it was her. So, it's a little, like, again, I'm not saying that these are deal breakers, but if you observe that and you're like, what's going on here? Well, then it sort of, like, seems to me that there was already the door was a little bit open for the kind of stuff we're seeing now. That's what I'm getting at. So, and you have to that's going to come up. But okay, but the last thing I wanted to say for real, though, is that when you get to the end of the third film, and I think that he embodied this very well. You really got the sense when Frodo and Sam were on Mount Doom and they were struggling to get there, and their lips are all dried up and they're tired and they're hungry and their morale is at the bottom. That looked like that could have been in the trenches. Like, I think that way that he visualized that, it was like he knew, like being in the trenches during World War I with the mustard gas and all that other crap, that was going on. That was, I think that they embodied that. And that's the reason why, despite the fact that anyone can enjoy Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, I think that they are primarily stories that men enjoy. And I think that's because it is speaking to the human condition, but it's also speaking to conditions that only some men will actually face. And I think that because of that, it resonates. So, and I think that the missing component in almost all of our garbage media is the masculine perspective. That's what's missing.
So, it's like this, not just like masculine characters, and that also like a masculine understanding of the importance of recognizing people's moral autonomy. That, like, the ability to act and judging people based on their actions is sort of a masculine thing, or at least is more associated with masculine gender expression. And it's part, the truth is that if you don't recognize people's actions as a huge component of their character, you are not recognizing an essential part of their humanity. And I think that's missing. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we can wrap it up now.
All right. Actually, come. Skippy. Oh, he's dead to the world. I wanted to show you how big he's gotten. Skippy. My God, I better check to make sure he's alive. Just a second.
I think Jojo heard Allison's whistle somehow because he's at the door.
Yeah, sorry. Come. All right, let's see if I can.
All right.
Come here. Up. Hey buds. Up. Okay, he's waking up. So
he's still waking up.
He's not all the way there. Yeah, he's still waking up. He's groggy. I'm sorry, little bud. Okay, so is that the last final word that you have on this thing? Up.
Yeah, except well, you know, like I said, I think that this
See,
is
that's-
a property that should not be treated trivially, and it doesn't look like the fan base is allowing that
Oh
to be the
boy.
case. So, you know, good on you people. If you guys want, I think it'd be really funny if you all put your own spoilers
Yeah.
for the
In the
Amazon
comments.
Lord in the comment section. Yeah, put
Yeah,
your own
what-
spoilers. What was the most you know, spine
Amazing
tingling
moment.
amazing moment from the series?
Of the Power of the Rings. Yeah.
yeah.
What is the Power of the Rings?
I think it was one.
Why?
I think it was when the
Said.
yeah. I think it was when the Balrog said it's Morbin time, and then Morbed. You know, I think that was. I mean, I was just shook by that. So
I love Galadriel's Deadpool like narration over all the action.
Yeah, how she keeps breaking the fourth wall to talk
Breaking
to us.
the
Yeah,
fourth
that's
wall. To talk to us about her sexual peccadillos.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I like the bit where you know, the Dudadane guy slams the trunk on his car and says, "Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a gangster." Okay, that was a reference to Goodfellas, in case you guys don't know. Okay. So,
can you imagine like Power with Saruman? Gandalf is saying freeze frame.
yeah.
I bet you're wondering how I got here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right, all right.
All right. So, you want to do your final spiels?
Okay, so if you enjoy this content, and you should because it's really unique, we have a unique voice, and people have noticed that somehow the arguments we make seem to permeate into the culture and get made by larger YouTubers. So if you want to support that kind of unique content, please go to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. Put a few shekels in the hat. Very appreciated, because I don't want to stop this now. I mean, it's been 9 years in. Let's do another 90 until we finally convince people that they have to care about the half of the human race that keeps everything running. All right. feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. Okay, back to you, Brian.
All right. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please smash that like button. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Like I said, maybe give us a peek into spoiler territory regarding this new series. Add to the humor, and if you could, maybe copy pasta it into the original video on the Prime Video YouTube channel. I think it looks like a lot of fun. I'm gonna put some in myself. So, and yeah, just give us your thoughts. And I guess please share this video, because sharing is caring. And thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Red Chill Cinema, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.